Well, well. Look at what we're doing today. It's the start of a work week, a brand new work week. Do we hate Mondays? Yes, but after the work day is done, we get to have some fun. Look at who we have today. This is Stirring the Pot with Don Kincaid and my very special guest, Danny Bryant. What's up, my man?
Good, how are you, Don? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Mondays suck, but not when we get to have some playtime after work. And thank you so much for coming on Stirring the Pot, hanging out, talking with us, the fans. I appreciate it, my friend.
Oh, no problem, man. Listen, I understand the concept of Mondays. You can't drink on Mondays, you know? I mean, it's probably 5 o'clock somewhere, but, it's like, it can't beat Mondays. It can't.
This is a fine start. I think we're going to have some fun. We'll have some good laughs. I'm sure we'll get some good stories. We're going to plug the shit out of what you're all about over here because you're affiliated with one of my all-time favorite friends in wrestling that we meet new friends when we go out as fans, my friend. And when we meet all of these you never know who you're going to make a new friend with. And you are associated with one of my all-time favorite guys, Rick Del Santo. We like to call him the Prof. You guys are having some fun over there.
Yeah, man. Me and Rick go a little bit back. So about a year ago, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to make a YouTube. I was getting bored. And this was probably maybe like a month or two before the pandemic. So I was just like, fuck it, whatever. I had gotten my dresser all set up, my shelf for all my wrestling content, home media, because I'm a home media collector. I can't stand digital nowadays. It's pathetic. You never know what can happen. So about maybe like 3 or 4 months go by, and Rick's video just pops up on like a recommended video to watch. So I was like, all right, let me check him out. Now, going through that process on his video, it gave a location on like, where he's from. So I'm like, Hamden. I was like, okay, let me just see out of curiosity. So I clicked it and I was like, holy shit, this guy's like 10 minutes away from me. So I started hitting him up, we started exchanging stories, and he was just like, we talked about Northeast Wrestling, which I was highly affiliated with. Used to go to all the Northeast Wrestling shows here in my city. I'm from Waterbury. So he was just like, dude, you wouldn't happen to be at that show? I was like, yeah. He was like, dude, let's connect, let's work together. Yeah, no problem. So the first episode that we did together, he was like, hey, do you watch Impact at all? And I was like, dude, I haven't watched Impact since like the Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff era. I was like, yeah, I haven't seen Impact in years. I don't know what the fuck station they're on or anything. So I was completely baffled, bamboozled and shit. So we started doing that weekly, started getting other people on the show. Now there's 5 of us, but I was basically the first guy he recruited. And then, just this past month, as you've seen, I've been getting some pretty big names on the show. So, because I had told Rick, I was like, listen, come January, I'm not fucking around no more. Like, I'm about to start emailing some big guys, so watch out. Okay, okay, shrug it off. Like, okay, like, all right, like, watch, you'll see. And within that first month of January, I had already gotten like 4 guys. Like 4 guys. Well, one of them I thought like, okay, with ease. The other guys threw me off guard. But other than that, I've been having fun. I've been doing this, week after week, just trying to put up the best content as possible. And for some of you guys who haven't seen, um, we just had Nick Aldis, NWA World Heavyweight Champion, on the show. Yeah, that came out of nowhere. That just came out of the blue. I had messaged him. I was like, I bet he won't respond. Responded, and I was like, oh, hey, Rick. Oh, okay. So got that situated. And yeah, we're keeping the ball rolling. So I had told Rick, I'm like, listen, man, you ain't gonna do this by yourself. As long as you got me with you, like we're gonna make things possible for 2021.
Mhm.
But
You know, the excitement just for me as a fan, and then seeing Rick Del Santo and yourself, the PWZ podcast. I know we haven't mentioned any of that. We're definitely building to that. But seeing you two guys sitting with Nick Aldis, man, I was a one-man party. I was popping like a motherfucker. I go, look at what these guys have just grabbed. This is such a great get. I was so stoked for you guys, because I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you will.
right,
Um, I go from the ground up. I look for the guys and girls that are day one in a new promotion as a student. I look for their first interview or their first promo or their first match or what have you. And that's kind of the flip side to where you guys right now are sitting, because holy shit, you guys have been a locomotive out of control, leading up to Nick Aldis. So before we get carried away, I want to calm everything down a little bit because we're talking about so much. First off, boys and girls, PWZ podcast, the face page. We're going to plug this the whole time we're talking here. Get on the face page and other social medias. My man Danny's going to give you some more of that. But get on there now. Check that stuff out. Look back to what they've been what they've been doing, the talents they've been getting on, because they're very familiar faces to us, the fans. So, Danny, leading up to this big get, and I slight nobody previous, but we're talking Nick fucking Aldis, man. Leading up to Nick Aldis, could you please tell us, the fans, some of the guys that were kind of starting to flow under the PWZ podcast umbrella, man?
well, when I first started doing interviews, we were just doing weekly shows like reviews, retro reviews. We were doing Sunday reviews, just like WCW stuff, old school WWF, ECW. Then Rick approached me because he had prior experience of getting people on the show. He was like, "Hey, I want to start getting guys on the show. How do you feel about that? Would you join me?" Uh, Rick, I haven't done this before, right? Oh no, I know, but all right, I'll do it. I like to practice in the mirror or something like that, see who I'm talking to, even though it's a reflection of myself, reflection of perfection, baby. But you know what? It was like the first guy that I got the chance to interview was current PAPW Intercontinental Champion Bull Dread.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
I was familiar with Bull Dread because ironically, the first Northeast wrestling show that I went to back in late 2008 was his debut show for
Oh,
NEW.
okay.
So we weren't familiar with each other, but as the years went on, we started to form a connection. Even though he would mistake me for my cousin. Hey, Adam, how's your cousin? It's like, I'm Danny. Oh, yeah. I know that. But you know what? It's all cool. It's all mutual. Mike's a good guy. I love seeing him around. Um, some of the other guys after that, the Juice, JT Dunn, amazing talent. Um, then that's when the ball started kind of rolling. Like, hey Dan, we got a WWF guy. Like, what? Okay. I talked about bringing Duke the Dumpster Drozy. I was like, okay,
Wow.
you know what? I'll do it. And then after that, Barry Horowitz, and that was the last interview I did, and that was in December. Once January rolled, and I told Rick, like, hey, listen, I'm starting to take things serious. Be on the lookout, please, because I'm gonna start emailing guys. I had this whole format written down, like, listen, just copy, paste, very
Yep.
professional, very sophisticated. I was like, yeah, gotta make them accept this, gotta convince them. So once January came along, the first guy that I interviewed was James Ellsworth.
Oh,
Hey, why not? Any man with two hands has a fighting chance. So does this guy. And I did. And you know what? That was a pretty good interview. We went through some CZW stuff, his WWE career. After that, the big name kind of showed up when we acquired Heath Slater. Now,
Yes.
that was a guy that I had messaged a couple months prior, and nothing out of it. Didn't take it personal. All right, cool. There's other opportunities.
Mhm.
But that one day I was at work, all of a sudden my phone goes off. Hey, Dan, what's up? Heath Slater. What? I was like, no way. So, I started getting, communication with him and everything. And he was like, hey, let's do it. I ain't going to talk about the price because, we just negotiated on a good price. Went on for that for an hour. And it was good. We talked about some good stuff. We talked about the plans that were supposed to happen for WrestleMania 36, which I'm going to talk about that briefly.
Well, yeah.
In which basically the Nexus was supposed to show up at WrestleMania, and it was supposed to be all original 8 members. 2 reasons why that didn't happen. 1, the pandemic. 2, there was about 1 or 2 guys who weren't down for it. And if you could think of those 2 guys, by all means. But yeah, after that, Chris Harris, Wildcat Chris Harris, loved talking to him. We had a good story about him facing Mr. Perfect inside the ECW arena back in 2001. This was obviously after ECW closed its doors. Great guy. He was always willing to help. He was like, hey, man, you guys need any help? Let me know. And, I emailed his wife back. I was like, hey, listen, thank you for this opportunity. Because she was the one that made this possible. So we got into that. We had the Man of Steel, Mike Verna. Great guy, awesome guy. Unbelievable talent. I think he has some big shoes to fill when that time's right. And then as of recently, Nick Aldis. And then previously we had Jimmy Rave. Jimmy Rave, everybody knows, I'm sure some of you guys know, with the situation of his arm amputation. So I'm just going to say it on air. I did give the guy $100 just to help him out to get a prosthetic arm, just to say I did my good deed for the day. So it's always helpful to benefit the wrestling business, because you're obviously paying it back. But,
Yes.
We got a lot more things coming up. There is going to be a new episode dropping this coming weekend. It's going to be with KTB, Kyle the Beast. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. One half of the tag team Iron Beast. Great guy. Stay tuned for that. But if you guys haven't checked out the Nick Aldis episode, check out the PWZ podcast.
I wanted to touch upon the Nick Aldis just a little bit. I noticed on the timeline, it's over an hour. I was surprised. Very first thing, 2 things. It's fucking Nick Aldis, holy shit. But then I look at the time run, and I go, wow, these guys got him for over an hour. That's kind of surprised me. Did that surprise you?
It surprised me. I mean, it was at the point because when I messaged him, he never gave me a time limit. He basically just gave me the price, and he just gave me unlimited time. So me and Rick just planned everything out. We wanted to keep it up to date, especially when it came to current NWA information, what he's up to nowadays. But yeah, it was cool. We got a lot out, and that was probably one of my favorite interviews. I mean, no offense to anybody else that I have interviewed, because everybody else that I've interviewed, phenomenal. They hold a special piece. But yeah, Nick Aldis, and not only that, but the fact that he's the current NWA World Heavyweight Champion, that's what made me feel so overwhelmed, because I was like, oh, we're practically talking about the top guy in the wrestling industry right now.
Now, and not only that, but he's held that championship on, and I talk about this on Stirring the Pot very often. I love character. I love storyline. Obviously, in ring, we want to see that. But I also love a long title reign. I enjoy long title reigns. And right now, Nick Aldis is on a title run, my man. So he's bringing quite the package as a get when you're reaching out to these guys and girls. And I know, like you said, this takes no slight to anybody else that you've ever interviewed, because we love when we do these things. We love every single one of them, and like you said, everyone holds a special place. But some just really stick out. And I mean, but if you're, I mean, let's be honest. If you start mentioning names and then you break out Nick Aldis, the wrestlers would pop for Nick Aldis. I mean, come on.
Right. And the fact that, he brings so much nostalgia to that championship. I find that championship more prestigious than the WWE championship itself. Just because that title doesn't have to go through any modifications, any changes, and the fact of who's holding it. At the time of interviewing him, he's already held the title for 850 plus days.
Wow. Wow. That's insane. I like how you said, though, no modifications. It's the original belt that Corrigan took when he bought into the project of NWA. Seeing that original 10 pounds of gold and stuff, like a very good point. I love, absolutely, one of my all-time favorite championships to just gawk at. It's very appealing. It's not over the top. It's traditional. It's NWA. I mean, so it's got this lifeline, all of these stories from all of the guys and that has held it before Nick and stuff. I just found that for you guys, and I know it's hard when you get somebody at one point. You're like, how the hell do we raise the bar now? I mean,
Yeah.
and I know it might be difficult, but you know what, man? Just having him under your hat, saying that we had Nick Aldis for not only as an interview, but we had him for a solid hour plus. I think that says a lot. Man, great get. All the names, again, thank you for listing all of that leading up to Nick Aldis, because what a list of names. And we're talking Barry Horowitz, one of my all-time faves, because I grew up on WCCW, AWA, NWA, and those older school promotions. Growing up with that, and Barry Horowitz, once that WWF era, Barry Horowitz was a freaking household name, no matter what his position was, what his job was at that time. But one of the all-time best. So you guys are getting from Barry Horowitz to a guy, Heath Slater, who's left at holy shit, who's left at WWE, gone to Impact, made his way with the whole Rhino story, and now he's part of Impact. That was another one that really kind of surprised me. Like, wow, holy crap,
Well, I think the only reason why it kind of surprised me was I know during the pay-per-view he did sustain an injury. So you figure him sustaining an injury, he probably has all this free time. And it didn't dawn on me until he emailed me. And even after the emails and going through the interviews, I'm thinking, oh shit, this guy is injured. So he probably was just like, he even told me after we got done recording, he was like, man, I miss going to Comic Cons. I miss doing meet and greets, and he gave me a fair price. He even told me up close, he was like, listen, I did a fair deal with you because he would have charged me a lot more from what he told me. So I was like, thank you. And yeah, you know what? Definitely one of the nicest guys. He was just so easy to approach. So that's what made this interview so fun.
Cool. Now, yourself, Mr. Del Santo, you mentioned that there's a team of 5 guys right now under the PWZ podcast umbrella?
Yes. So let me run down this timeline here. So obviously it started off with Rick. Rick wasn't really doing as much at the time because when I met him, he was doing like pro wrestling loot unboxings, pro wrestle crates. He probably had like maybe like 1 or 2 interviews, maybe 3 interviews under his belt. But as soon as he acquired me and we started doing like retro reviews and weekly reviews for Impact, that's when we started to elevate just a little bit. After that, another gentleman came.
I hate to interrupt, but leading up to this, Mr. Del Santo, he's not a camera guy. He's not a take a video, get in front of the stuff. And so for him to get out of that shell and start doing this with the unboxings and stuff. We
Uh,
were reaching out and communicating when he was getting that started. And I know that he was kind of nervous building up to these things. And then getting into the interviews, hooking up with another guy and starting to do this. I absolutely love seeing Rick Del Santo blossom because he's got so much knowledge to share. He has so much love about wrestling to share. And again, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to state that.
right. Yeah, no, you know what? When I first met Rick, it didn't really dawn on me that he was nervous or anything. So for you to bring that up, kind of catches me off guard and surprised because I never would have thought that Rick would be such a bashful person. But going through the timeline again, picking back up, we acquired a third guy. Because I remember Rick invited me. He was like, "Hey, I'm starting to do retro Sundays with this guy named JJ Sins. JJ Sins, who hails from the Windy City, um, started getting into, uh, basically communicating with him. First retro review we did, I believe it was In Your House, the first In Your House pay per view from '95, and that's how we got acquainted. After that, for some of you guys who don't know, I am a YouTuber. I go by the name Dan the Beast 94. I've been on YouTube since January 11th of 2020, and throughout the past couple months, I got acquainted with a gentleman I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but the DVD Freak, and big time YouTuber, big time collector, great friend of mine. Um, we had gained a friendship, and I was like, dude, come on the podcast with me, do this one episode because I invited him. We reviewed ECW Living Dangerously 2000, which was an event Rick actually attended. So we were like, all right, let's do it. Let's get a fourth guy. So I had told Rick, like, hey, I got this guy. We're going to bring him into the show. We thought it was going to be a one-time thing. It was only supposed to be a one-time thing. And, we had so much fun. It was a drunk shenanigans, laughing our asses off, just talking wrestling, And yeah, after that, I had told Freak, I was like, hey, listen, how would you like to be a permanent member? He was like, oh, dude, I don't know, because very antisocial when it comes to groups and everything, because he's a solo guy. And, just like me and everybody else used to be. So after that, we just started doing it full time with him, doing retro reviews every Sunday. Me and him actually had a series on the show where we were reviewing every 2002 pay per view for WWE, which will come back eventually. We got 3 more to run down, but after that, we're jumping right into the next year. The final guy, the Greenport Destroyer, Andy. Haven't gotten any time with him yet when it comes to projects, but I know him and Rick have done some things together. Speaking of other interviews, those guys have interviewed guys like the Maestro. They had interviewed Rhett Titus from Ring of Honor. They've also interviewed Shane Taylor. Oh boy, brain fart. Let me think. But they have interviewed so many guys already, and Andy is another big contribution to this group when it comes to getting guests. So when it comes down to him, he's definitely another reliable source. So yeah, at the time being, there's 5 of us. Haven't done a lot of retro reviews lately. Just our schedules have been kind of messed up and in the way, but Rick was even telling me today before I jumped on here with you. He was like, dude, you're practically the only guy doing, content at the moment. You're bringing content to the podcast. And, it's like, I told him, I'm like, dude, now you're listening to me. Like I told you, I wasn't going to mess around this year. So, yeah, just like I said, just going to keep the ball rolling and see what this year offers.
So what makes you do this retro review stuff? Is it for content? Is it just for being selfish and wanting to talk about some of your fave stuff from in the back years, or why the retro?
I think it's a mixture of everything. just to keep content, just to keep everybody posted. When it comes to retro review Sundays, depending on the month, we'll pick a topic. There was one month in particular, we did a whole bunch of SummerSlam reviews. They were like, all right, everybody pick a SummerSlam, we'll review it. Everybody pick a Clash of the Champions from WCW, we'll review it. And, that's basically how it started.
Uh, now I was doing this thing because obviously the old King COVID has effed everything up.
Right.
I was doing this thing Center Ring, local access show on Thursday evenings in Wallingford. We would take our footage, myself and Fogman, who started it. He's been doing it for like 20, 25 plus years. This guy has been a monster on the scene for many a year. But my point being is, when he started, it was kind of one guy does WWE or F, whatever the era was. One guy does ECW. One guy does Impact, TNA. One guy does this. So they were kind of separating their things. And little by little, obviously, time changes everybody's life. It's kind of transitioned into a bunch of independent footage, promos, flyers, and we try to get the word out about local talent, local promotions in the New England area and beyond. I mean, not just in the New England area, but across the country. So this feels like this progression with PWZ has really come quickly with a timeline here, has it not?
Yeah, I think it progressed very quickly. I think Rick had only started YouTube probably around the same time I did. So the fact that he was getting into it, the same time as me, was kind of a coincidence. So by the time we met up and everything, it was kind of like one of those things where we were just brainstorming and just coming up with ideas like, oh, what could we do next? And then, then we started meeting guys, going down to M&J's Collectibles in Southington. We had met guys like Eric Young, Maven, Kurt Hawkins, Just Incredible, Wildfire, Tommy Rich. So we plan on doing that again. We do our on the road stuff some of the times as well. But yeah, I think sooner or later, I know me and Rick were in discussion about this, but we want to try and put out some type of merchandise for you guys. So maybe like wristbands, t-shirts. We want to get our own pro wrestling tee store going. I know Bull Dread just started his own. So, I think the only struggle that we have is the concept of creating images. So like logos, t-shirt designs. I think that's our only lacklust. But other than that, I think this year is going to be filled with promises. So hopefully somewhere down the line, once we reach a certain amount, I'm hoping to get sponsors because I want to put it more out there, not just here in the Connecticut base, but like more in the Northeast line. Hopefully sometime down in the Southern base. We want to be global. Let's just put it that way.
Thinking big, setting goals. I like that, my friend, because I mean, all I've ever done, I've taken my phone, gone to shows, record. That's all I've ever done. All of these interviews, just my phone. That's it. I don't have a computer. And you're going to find this, I don't know, interesting or sickening. We're going to find out. I, I write nothing down. I don't have a question ever for any interview that I ever do. I never write a damn thing down. I never research anybody, even if I've never met them. If I've reached out to them as a new talent or somebody that I've kind of discovered on the Facebook or what have you, I I don't look up a damn thing. Why I don't know. It's just something that I've always done, and somehow I get away with it. I don't know how. It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
PSA, public service announcement. Do not do it that way, boys and girls. It's been told to me by many a podcaster that I've had on here. Don't do it that way because very dangerous. But in my instance, it's dangerous and it's fun all at the same time. But my point being is, I never really put a bunch of money into getting this. There's not a bunch of equipment. There's no magical producer doing something for me or nothing like that or whatever the case may be. And there's no little, there's no little elves hooking me up with content and reaching out. It's a one-man show. We have a lot of fun. We go truly independent on the independent scene. But really, my point being is, I'm so I'm so basic and so raw when it comes to this stuff. My show is actually degressed instead of progressing, if you will. Real quick, because I used to do skits before for an intro, and then it worked into I would take graphics because not everybody wanted to do a skit, so I would take graphics and add it, and then I would have my old singer from my band, his original music I would have for the music, for the score, if you will.
Okay.
And it was all sit down face to face. But then the corona hit. Now you can't do face to face no more, so we started doing the Skypes. That was back in March 22nd of last year. So now, up to date, something happened with my video editor on my phone that I use, and it would only allow me to finish the video up to 94% and would never finalize. So I just took a raw video, a raw interview right from Skype, threw it in my editor just to see if it would finish for whatever reason. But just, took a couple pictures and threw it on. And it happened to work. It seems the music that I was trying to do, it didn't like it. It kept spitting it back out and it wouldn't let me finalize. So I said, screw it. And I just take the raw file from Skype, I put it over to YouTube, and I'm done. So I'm very basic, I'm very raw, but that kind of seems to be the formula of my show, really. Where you guys and girls that are doing this, the What's Up Wrestler, you have the Joey G Sign Rip podcast that's come out. You have you guys, and there's many others that I could go on and on. There's so many podcasters out there. I look at your graphics, I look at what you're producing, and I'm like, man, I feel like a jackass. I'm so basic compared to everybody else, but I feel, and a couple guys and girls have told me, don't change nothing. Leave it the way it is. Because I feel like I need to bring some more production to the show. I feel like I'm not giving it a fair shake for the talent that I'm interviewing, if you will. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I think the consensus as right now, I'm just leaving I'm just leaving stuff the way it is, and we're gonna keep rolling and seeing what we can do, because now today's episode 243, my man.
Nice.
Yeah, so we've been rolling strong. At one point I felt like I had to interview everybody right now today, so I would do 3 interviews after work. I would do 4 or 5 on a Saturday and then 4 or 5 on a Sunday. I was averaging 25 interviews a week for a 5-week stretch, and I did 115 interviews in 5 weeks.
Wow. Definitely a lot better than me. Oh, man.
Let me tell you, and I'm not throwing numbers at you to be like, hey, look at me on how much I did.
No.
But what I did was I wanted to do as much because I loved getting the Skype reach compared to doing regular face-to-face sit-downs, because I was being invited to their homes or a park or somewhere. Like I got Scotty Anarchy and Just Incredible, but I had to go to some park in Waterbury because who the hell wants me at their house? I don't blame them. So I was having some really, really cool conversations face-to-face. But after 26 episodes, I had to change it up because of the corona. So here we are. From episode 27 to episode here we are today, 243, from March 22nd. I'm waiting for the year anniversary. I want to do some numbers and see how many fucking interviews I've done. It's been a crazy ride. We get to talk to fine talent. We get to talk to fellow interview guys and girls that are doing really fun stuff out there. Do you have, besides the talent, and I know you're young, the PWZ podcast, and I didn't mean to yammer about what I've got going on, but I was kind of leading into this. The PWZ podcast, do you feel that the contributions that you have from a 5-man team, because I'm a solo guy and I can only do so much, and I try to think I try to be creative, the 5 member team you got going on? Is it hard to get everybody onto the same page?
On most points, yes. There'll be certain times where we'll have something scheduled, and then something just kind of comes up, doesn't mean to be, and then we'll have to reschedule. But with that being said, at the time being, probably within the past month or so, it's basically just me and Rick or Rick and Andy, the Greenport Destroyer. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's difficult because when we do our content, we try to make it fresh as possible. We'll put out at least 1 or 2 episodes per week. The Nick Aldis episode, speaking of numbers, Nick Aldis was episode 107. So within like the past year, Rick went from like episode 20 something to all 5 of us at 107. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a difficult task. It really just depends on what's on our mindset, what kind of obligations we got going on, and what the agenda is. So when it comes to plotting, sorting, and everything, for the time being, it's been mostly me because I've been the guy who's been reaching out to everybody, independent guys, big guys, not too big guys, but big enough for me. But and I just take a hit or miss, and that's practically it. I'm not going to stand out like a sore thumb and be like, "Oh, that sucks," But I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Like, hey, I support local things. When I heard about stirring the pot, I was like, I want to be on that. I want to branch out the podcast. I want to reach out and just um you know, just put the podcast out there.
Yeah.
So, and you talked about nerds of wrestling or what's up wrestler. I know Justin. Justin, very cool guy. I've hung out with him on a couple occasions. Haven't done an episode with him yet, but there has been some times where I've been offered like, "Hey, come on the show for a prediction show or something," and it's like, can't make it. It's like my schedule is too hectic, but I always manage to put in time for something that I really want. So when it came down to Nick Aldis, it was like, all right, Wednesday, 8 o'clock, that's it. Like that was it. That was it for me. So now after Nick Aldis and after this episode that drops, I primarily want to focus on independent guys, local guys, in particularly female competitors, just because we haven't had a female competitor yet. Well, there was one. Never released that episode, only because of the doubt that, oh boy, I probably shouldn't even get into it, but let's just say it didn't go as long as I expected, and there was practically no backbone to stories. So I was just like, you know what? Cut, put in the archives. Rick, don't put it out, please. Because as of right now, I'm still looking for the first lady of PWZ.
Oh, wow. Wow. Huh. Interesting. Fun fact. Now,
So,
uh, you're going on the independent, you're going to be switching it just a smidge.
just a
Uh,
smidge.
Now, going on the independent, you have, and not that you don't have so many options out there on the bigger platforms, but myself, and I know some others, we don't just go for the said in-ring talent being wrestler A and wrestler B. I look for the referees, the managers, the ring announcers. If you're a bell ringer, I don't give a rat's ass. Please come on my show. We love to talk wrestling. We love to get you your talent. If you're there doing a job, there's a talent. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Please come on the show. Let's have some fun and talk wrestling. Are you going to be opening the avenues to more than wrestler A and wrestler B? Are you going to be opening those doors up a little bit?
Oh, of course. Well, even in the past too, Rick has brought in guests, not just in particular wrestlers, but promoters, bookers. We've had authors. Um, I believe we've even had referees at some point. So yeah, I mean the door is always open for everybody.
Because there's so much talent out there, my friend. May it be anybody from a wrestler, ring announcer, manager, referee, and such. What I did was, I think it was like the second week that I was doing all of these crazy numbers. Was, you know what? I want to have Zebra Week, and I tried to reach out to the local referees that I've made friendships and relationships with over the course, and I reached right out to all of them, and we had ourselves a fine Zebra Week. It was so much fun. I even got drunk with Ref Bill Thompson on apple cinnamon or apple pie moonshine. Holy shit! One of my all-time fave shows. Whenever anybody asks me what's your favorite interview, you can never really pick a number one. So I do a little tie, if you will. There's a tie for number one, and it's three interviews because I can't pick from the one. And getting drunk with Ref Bill is right up there with number one. You mentioned Nick Aldis being probably your top interview right now. Now going to the other talents though, to the independent scene, you'll find, and like you said, you don't always expect a yes from everybody because not everybody's gonna say yes. And we totally get that walking in. I mean, if you don't, I mean, shame on you. You've got to expect that. Right. I have probably, I've got about 30, 40 fucking messages unread just sitting there, no selling my ass. So I get it. You just don't get answered all the time. Reaching out to the independent level is a different animal. You'll probably be a tad more busier than you were trying to reach out to the bigger names, if you will. Ready for that influx of talent, my friend?
Oh yeah, you know what? At this point, I'm ready for anything. When it comes to interviews, Rick has dubbed me as the king of PWZ interviews. So when it comes to me, I'm down for anything. So independent guys, local guys, guys who are almost ready to get signed. It's like, come my way. I'm ready for you. So
now we have mentioned the PWZ. You can find them on the face page, and I usually do this at the tail end, but I'm going to do it at the tail end again just for a reminder. Please share with us, the fans, where can we find you guys on the PWZ podcast?
So PWZ podcast, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. We have our own Facebook page, so be sure to like that. You can find us on Twitter. I believe you can also find us on Instagram, but that's mainly ran by Rick. But all forms of social media, streaming platforms, we got like Spotify, obviously YouTube, as I said, iTunes, iHeart, anything, look us up, we'll be there. So
spreading those wings to the streaming services, something I've never even thought of doing, probably kicking myself in the ass. Is it hard to get in that boot of streaming service because there's so many of
them? A couple of times. I mean, I have no experience with actually uploading it onto a stream. That's mainly Rick's specialty. So when it comes to Rick, uploading the episodes, going through the editing, he's the one to usually do all that. And I believe there is an app that you can use. I believe it's Anchor, and Anchor allows you to distribute all your streaming platforms like anywhere.
Oh, okay. Nice. Because like with the mobile, I'm very limited. Like I can't, if I wanted to do a YouTube live video and add a guest, I'm not doing that with the mobile. So I would have to have software, I'd have to have laptop software and all of that jazz. Because I've looked into it, because I'd love to do like a live one. I don't know. I might be shooting myself in the foot too. But yeah, I've looked into this stuff, but just a little more difficult because I don't have the equipment, if you will. But still, having tons of fun. I mean, I would never change anything I've ever done so far up to this point. I would never change a damn thing. Now, I wanted to kind of talk to you about yourself because we've talked about PWZ podcast at very many topics as well about PWZ because that's what we do on the show. We like to plug our favorite talent. promotions, fellow casters, if you will. I never consider myself a podcast. I'm just a guy with a phone who does interviews.
Right.
And whenever anybody came in, now we have a friend named Donovan. He's a 16-year-old kid. He started hanging out with us on the fan roundtable, and
We've
he
had him on
started
the
doing.
show.
Yeah, love us. We call him the future. We love the future. I'm so glad you had him on the show. That's amazing to hear. But he came here all the way from Massachusetts, Italy, and he hand delivered an award that I won that we had on our fan roundtable awards. It's been the only one, and he came here personally with camera lady to deliver my award.
Wow.
Now, this is my point. He knocks on the door. I open the door. He walks in, and this is his first statement. So this is where the magic is made, huh? Oh, I love that fucking kid so much. Yes, Donovan, this is where the magic is made. Very lackluster, if you will. Yeah, Donovan, such a great kid. Such a great kid. But the topic I did want to dive into is we haven't talked about one Mr. Danny Bryant. I don't know a damn thing about you. I even started this interview talking about Mr. Rick Del Santo, the prop. Yeah. So, Danny, and what I like to do is some of the general stuff without asking the regular general questions, if you will. So, as a kid, you're growing up. Who's getting you into wrestling? Because my pop, right off the ripper, comes to my mind. Who's getting you into wrestling? What year? Because we gotta stick a year on a timeline.
Right.
Are you watching it on a black and white TV? Is it flat TV? Or where are we at here?
All right. So when it came to wrestling, let's just say I stumbled upon it on accident.
Oh.
Now, my mother had given me the story that her father, my grandfather, was a big time wrestling fan back in the 70s and 80s. So that's probably where I get my love and passion for. But I tend to go a little bit over the limit. But when it came to discovering wrestling, my mother told me I was 3. So 3, we're talking 1997 here. This is like the hype of the Monday Night Wars.
And yes, it is.
She was telling me the story of her flicking through the channel. She stumbled upon wrestling, and short for words, I'm sitting there like, kind of like my word for stop, like, like, whoa, what is this? Don't recall what show it was. All I know, she said it was on Monday night. Doesn't recall what show it was, but that's practically where it started. Now, when it came to watching wrestling on a religious basis, that wasn't until about 2002, 2003.
Oh.
Now, I was very familiar with the video games, so I knew who some of the guys were, some of the guys weren't. But I remember the first time I stumbled upon wrestling, it was actually the episode of SmackDown where Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle had the Iron Man match for the WWE Championship.
What a fine episode to jump on.
Yeah. So I jumped on that, and I was instantly a fan from there. And I remember going over one of my friend's house to watch WrestleMania 20, which was the first WrestleMania I ever witnessed live. And yeah, I mean, pretty much the rest is history. When it came to wrestling, I think I watched it religiously from that time up until about 2010. And then after that, I kind of stopped watching it after a while. Just wasn't in the mood to pay for cable. It's just like, had to struggle a little bit. So that's where, the home media comes into effect here, and which has grown outrageously, which I must say. But yeah, when it came to wrestling, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've gone through this phase. Oh, WWE, this is the only wrestling that exists. At that time, WWE is the best. But as soon as I started branching out, started, watching other things, I was like, let me see what independent wrestling is all about. So, as I mentioned before, the first time I went to Northeast Wrestling back in 2008, That was my first wrestling show, and that was the first show that Mike Boldred was at for Northeast. I had met guys like Velvet Sky. I met the late Viscera, Nelson Frazier, Big Daddy V, whichever you want to prefer him as, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So that was my first wrestling show. But then when it came to other guys, um, Zombie, Connecticut hardcore icon, Jason Blade, um, just countless other names that Brian Anthony, just countless guys that I ended up growing up to watch throughout the years. And then I just started attending more independent shows. Then I discovered Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor was one of those things I kind of stumbled upon by accident. And like I said, the rest is history. And here we are, sitting here talking about it.
uh, when you become a wrestling fan, uh, if you've grown up with it as a small child, or even if you catch it later on in life, it's hard to find a clique of friends that enjoy wrestling. Do you find that a difficult task, my friend?
It was easier back in the time. Me and my brother, we grew up as big wrestling fans. So everything that we talked about was wrestling, wrestling, wrestling. And then I met, friends along the way. I have family members that are wrestling fans as well. But then throughout the years, I'd had friends who were just like, I'm not into this shit anymore. I ain't gonna watch it. I'm only gonna watch like a certain brand. The storylines suck, but it's like at the same time, it's like, the storylines suck, but you're still watching it. It's a religious platform. You have to watch it just to know what's going to happen next. That's the only way I see it. And like, even if I'm sitting here watching Monday Night Raw, I know it's going to be shit, but I'm still going to watch it.
Whenever I tell my dad, because I take my dad to all the indie shows we go to, he's retired, loves going to it, loves seeing me get jazzed and ribbed by all of the talent when I do my thing over there. Absolutely. And Danny, times I would never ever change in my entire life, taking my pop to these shows and having some of the fun that we've had, absolutely priceless. Can't put a price on that shit. But taking them to the shows, uh, we talk all the time about wrestling and the talent that he's come to know, and that who digs him, and some of them really love him more than me at this point, because I'm such a jackass at the shows. We like Papa Kincaid better, kind of stuff. But we have plenty to talk about when we're just hanging out and bullshitting. But I start talking about WWE, and he goes, "Do you sit there and watch the whole 3 hours of that shit?" And I go, "Uh-huh." And he goes, "Fucking why?" I go, because I'm a wrestling fan. That's what I do." And he goes, "I could never fucking stomach that shit. I turn it on, I'll catch it, and I'll be like, let me see what Donnie's checking out here." And then he goes, "I'll get 5 minutes into it." And I'll be like, "How does he watch this shit?" And he goes, "I turn the channel immediately." So the wrestling fan has evolved so much over the course, if you
Right.
will, up to where we are. That's very evident. Um, there's one thing. Actually, there's many things that I don't get about the modern fan, because, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of guys were just WWE. That's all they knew. They didn't even know that wrestling was even existing around the WWE. You could mention all sorts of companies. They'd be like, "Huh? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not WWE."
Yeah.
I met so many of those guys. But what I'm driving at is WWE is obviously split off into this Raw SmackDown era of their life. Okay. It's been some years, obviously, but they have turned into this. Not only that, they added the ECW, then that got taken away, kind of faded away, which I didn't think that was going to last more than a freaking year. But then they bring in the NXT, which is absolutely doing fantastic for them. Totally different vibe, if you will, comparing to the Raw and SmackDown.
Right.
Now, the thing about fans, though, one of the things that really, really irks me, because I would never be able to do this, is, like you said, I'm only watching Raw because I like those three guys, or this storyline, because SmackDown's such a shitty show, or blah, blah, blah. If you're not watching both shows, I feel you're missing out on the entire company as a whole because let's just take NXT out of it. Let's say NXT is not even existing yet. It's still WWE.
Yep.
And I didn't mean to yell at you. I apologize. It's still fucking WWE. Why do we do this split thing as fans? I'll never ever know. Do you find that, my friend?
Just a little bit, which I think a lot of people gravitate more towards NXT just because it's kind of a bigger platform for some of our former independent talents. So it's like a lot of guys who went to these independent shows, they see them on NXT. Yeah, of course they're going to watch that. But by the time you get to the main show, Raw or SmackDown, and some of these guys are calling up, you're either crossing your fingers or you know, oh, this is going to dog shit. Like, that's it.
It's tough, and I've talked about that on the show. And I use one guy specifically because he just comes to mind. Is one Solomon Crow, also
Yeah.
known as Sammy Callahan, because Sammy's doing his thing on the indie scene. He gets called up, gets into the performance center. We as fans, fuck yeah, Sammy's into the performance center. He becomes Solomon Crow. He's not happy with what they're doing with him. So he takes off. He gets out of his contract or whatever happens. I don't know what the hell happened there. We don't know. Now he becomes Sammy Callahan back on the independent scene. Look at him thrive. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, things happen. Some of the wrestlers, male or female, manager, referee, it doesn't matter, ring announcer, they see the WWE always as the pinnacle, the big juggernaut, if you will. Because, I mean, it always has been over the course, you know? But you have these other avenues now, especially AEW, New Japan, and now you have MLW, ROH. You've got all sorts of avenues to go to. I'll never get. I only see WWE and nothing else. These blinders that fans put on it. Just I find it very odd, you know.
Right.
And
Um, I mean, when it came to me, I mean, wrestling was always you really got to think about it too. Like back in the 2000s, like after WWE had bought out WCW and ECW, wrestling went through a dark phase, and independent wrestling wasn't as big as it was today. So that's why I would say, like, I was actually one of those kids growing up, like, oh yeah, WWE's the best. I wouldn't even care to watch an independent show. I wouldn't even care to go to an independent show. I didn't end up going to my first WWE show until 2016. So tells you a lot there. But still, it's one of those things that I look back and it's like you tend to learn and gravitate off it. So now it's like support your local. That's why they say support your local wrestling because you never know who you're watching nowadays that can end up on a big platform. Which now wrestling nowadays, there's many sources. You have MLW, like you said. Um, we have the NWA, AEW, which I look at AEW as like the big, big time independent platform for independent wrestlers. And I you definitely got to thank Cody Rhodes for that. And then obviously WWE, which nowadays, I mean, I'll watch NXT here and there, and then a little bit of Raw, SmackDown. I just tend to never catch it. I don't know why, but yeah, support your local talents. And speaking of local talents, a lot of rumor and innuendo. Um, Christian Casanova, who I was very familiar with NEW, supposedly just signed a contract with WWE. So it's like you never know where these guys are going to go. You could be watching these guys live for like the next couple of months, whether you're in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Ohio, New York. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, they're on a big platform. That was the same way with me when I got introduced to Darby Allin. I was like, Darby Allin. I was like, okay, he seems all right. And then once I seen him in the ring, I was like, okay, this guy's a
yeah,
big deal. So
yeah.
when by the time he reached AEW, I literally sat there and clapped. I was like, that's amazing. How much can go within a short period of time.
Now you mentioned Mr. Casanova. He's following suit after one August Gray, who's been picked up off of the scene. I
Right.
Now, I'm going to use those two guys since you mentioned Mr. Casanova as examples. As an independent fan, I would go to all of these shows that are surrounding my area. Not only because I live in Connecticut, but I wouldn't just go to Connecticut shows. I'm going to Rhode Island. I'm going to Massachusetts. I'm going to New York. Stuff like that. I'm going to my surroundings. I'm doing the drives, if you will, as a fan. Um, but Christian Casanova, I remember him when he would come out to Beat It and come out as Michael Jackson, had the
Yeah.
hat, the garb, do his moonwalk and everything. We as fans, little by little, saw that evolution, becoming Killanova Inc. up at Chaotic and such, and seeing what he's become. And now he's been called up to the NXT Performance Center. And AG, same thing. I've seen AG refereeing matches, for Christ's sake. And I seen him. He was all good. Then he was retrosexual. Then he gets picked up. And now he's August Gray. So, like you said, my man, you never know. And that, for me, that's why I love, if I see, like Test of Strength, they produce their own students. PAPW, down in East Haven, they produce their own students. I love seeing that shit from the ground up because you never know where those students are going to end up. Some of them may quit. Not everybody makes it through. But the ones that make it through and persevere, you're going to see on a bigger platform sometime in their career. So I absolutely love the independent scene for that.
Right. And, I can pretty much say the same thing. Like I said, Casanova, Darby Allin, and then guys who are eventually going to get signed somewhere, somehow. JT Dunn, that's obviously one name. So I'm hoping one of these days he gets picked up somewhere. I know he had a few stints with Impact, but other than that, top tier talent right there. So
I really, because I wear the Death by Elbow, and I don't care if he's not on the card or not. I sport my Death by Elbow shirt many an event. JT Dunn, been around for a bit, fine talent. I'm not sure why he hasn't been picked up, but I know it's right there. It's just right around the corner for that guy. I mean, definitely a talent that's going to get signed very, very soon. Can I ask you something about one of the talents that we've seen go through our New England scene? And there's been many others, but I want to use this guy as an example. I can't call him his last name because I hate it, so I'm just going to call him Dijak. We've seen Dijak come up. Not only did we see him come through the Northeast Wrestling with a rivalry with Keith Lee, they did their series, their program, if you will, with a storyline. We've seen some really cool shit out of that rivalry. But I've also seen him in many, many other independent promotions around. Then he gets picked up, and I know that they don't keep everybody's name, and they want to change characters and do different things. Danny, what the fuck are they doing with Dijak? I mean, what are they doing?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the hell necessarily T-bar stands for. I mean, it just sounds like a bad protein shake. Other than that, I mean, phenomenal talent. I've met him on numerous occasions. I remember in the Bethany Arena, him and Matt Taven going at it for the Northeast Wrestling Championship numerous times. And then obviously him and Keith Lee, one match in particular, Over the Top 2017, Dijak and Keith Lee, phenomenal match. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's not his call. It's not his well-being to sit there and say, I'm going to go by the name T-Bar along with Mace and Slapjack. And I'm just sitting there like, wasn't that Stevie Ray's finisher? What the hell are you calling yourself Slapjack for? He looked like some ripoff of Casey James or Casey Dames from fucking what was it? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm just like, or Casey Jones, that's the name I'm thinking of. Yes, Casey Jones. But I'm just like, what? Like, what is this? And not only that, but it's like you hype these guys, you make them look like the next top tier stable, possibly in WWE, but yet not all of them as a whole have competed in a pay-per-view besides Slapjack back at Hell in a Cell.
And they were beating the living absolute shit out of anybody in their sights, including cameramen, timekeepers, bell ringers, you name it. They were annihilating them, like you said, trying to make them that next big faction. And then, I don't know, for the past 3 months, easily, they lose wherever. They lose everything that they're in. Like, how do you even do that? You can't build them up to make them lose.
And, it's like they're obviously recognizable. Even with the masks on, it's like, okay, that's Dijak, that's Slapjack, that's whatever Dio Madden, the guy who got put through a table by Samoa Joe. Like, okay, whatever. But it's like it doesn't have that same strive as seeing like a young batch of new guys coming from, like even like guys like the Nexus. Like obviously you've seen them on the first season of NXT, but as soon as you've seen all those guys caught up to the main roster after being fired or let go, it's like, oh shit, okay. And you figured that group's gonna go far too, which it did at some point. But after they divided the group, they try to make this whole thing where it was like, how WCW had black and white and it got too many members, and it's kind of like your little sister wants her own group too, and you make the Wolf Pack. That was basically the same thing with the Nexus, and you have the core on SmackDown. So
the core. I'm sorry. I keep the core out of my mind, to be honest with you. You mentioned, and I know I jumped timelines and stuff, and I didn't mean to go like on a fan tangent about our local independent wrestlers, but it just does piss me off when we see such excitement of what they can be, and then they turn them into Dijak into this weird ass character that means absolutely jack shit.
right.
And I think that's why I went on a tangent. So, boys and girls, I didn't mean to do that. I don't like to go on fan tangents. That's not my style. I wanted to revert back to something that you said about mom clicking during the Monday Night Wars. Now, during the Monday Night Wars, I was married, and at the time, I had 2 TVs, one in my bedroom, one in my living room. When it come to Monday night, I would get out of work and I would go grab my TV from the bedroom and I would hook both them some bitches up. We would have both Raw and Nitro running at the same time. My wife absolutely hated it. Couldn't stomach it for like a good solid month, but she got used to it. She warmed up a little bit, and she became a wrestling fan. Were you watching both product at that time? Because you were either go WCW or you were either go WWE. Were you kind of checking out both product?
Back at that time, I mean, the memory is kind of a little fuzzy because I was still very, very young at that time. But
only like 3, huh?
Right, yeah, I was 3 at the time. But growing up, as I went through the video games, the only video games that I played were WCW games before I even got to WWF games and WWE and so forth. So, I mean, to answer that question, I was probably primarily WCW because I was big into Sting. Sting's probably like one of my favorites during that time. And then you had guys, the cruiserweights. The cruiserweights are what drew me.
Phenomenal. Yeah, great times, great division, great talents that we got to see in that ring during that time. Danny, me and yourself, we could talk in jaw for like 3, 4, 5 hours, but I don't think everybody wants to listen to us talk for that long. So what I'd like to do, because we've had, where are we? A minute, an hour, 8 minutes. This has been absolutely amazing. It shot right by, man. Love that beautiful smile you've brought to the table. We've talked so much about wrestling, got to know Danny a little bit. And again, we brought PWZ to the forefront of the interview because that's what you're affiliated with. That's how we've met. And we got to talk to Danny, learn about him, see what was going on. But what I'd like to do, though, is now that we're going to bring this at a tail end, I'd like to maybe do something later on in the future. And I know I've talked to Rick and I've talked to Danny now. Why don't you take this thought and maybe pass it along to the team? What if we do a PWZ roundtable right here on Stirring the Pot. We get everybody together, try to connect everybody with their schedules. I know we got a lot of shit going on in our lives. Let's see if we can get a PWZ roundtable going on Stirring the Pot. What do you say, my man?
Oh man, you know what? Let me talk to the guys, and as of right now, I'm in. I'm definitely down for that. So
That would be amazing because I've got an idea already. Yeah, man, get a hold of your peeps and have your peeps call my peeps, and let's connect this soiree, if you will. That'll be some fun, man.
yeah, dude, listen, I'm all for it. Pick a date, pick a time. I'm ready. So
Uh, Before we go any further with that, is there an appearance fee because you've got multiple guys? Like you've got 5 guys. Is there an appearance fee for that?
no, not at all.
Sweet, sweet choice, if you will. Excellent. Thank you for that. Because my PayPal's in the negative. You're screwed anyways. This has been so much fun hanging out, talking wrestling with Danny, talking PWZ podcast. And before we let him go, I want him to plug the PWZ, where we can find them and such. So give us the whole social media stuff, sir.
So, of course, you can find PWZ, as I mentioned before, on Facebook. You can find them on Instagram, Twitter, and of course, you can find us on YouTube. If you're looking for streaming platforms, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. If you want to look for me individually, Facebook, Danny Bryant, Instagram, Twitter at DanTheBeast94. But of course, you can find me on YouTube as DanTheBeast94. So, I want to do my little YouTube intro here, or my YouTube cut, I should say. Be sure to hit that like button, leave your comments in the comment section down below, and subscribe, especially if you're going to be watching our channel, my channel, and you're not subscribed. What are you doing? Hit that button. And that's it.
Uh, that's a beautiful little gig you got going on there for the YouTube. That's amazing.
And you know what? It's so funny too, because now everybody that I made friends with on YouTube, they always say, "What are you doing?" It's like my signature slogan now.
You got to have a little niche, you know?
Oh yeah. I'm
Wow.
hoping one day I get a T-shirt out of it. So.
Oh man, man, this has been amazing. I cannot thank you enough for spending the time with us, talking to the fans. Because Danny, this isn't my show, my friend. It may have my name on it, but this is our show. This is for the fans, so we get to learn about talent, fellow guys and girls that are doing interviews, talking to the talent and such. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to give us some of your insight, what you've got going on, and get to know you a little bit. I do appreciate your time, my friend.
Hey, listen, the pleasure's all mine, man. Anytime.
Awesome. I can't wait to see if we get that PWZ podcast roundtable kicking. His peeps gonna call my peeps. This has been Stirring the Pot with Don Kincaid and my very special guest, Danny Bryant. Thank you so much, my man.
Thank you.